Did you know when at rest, an individual can inhale over 11,000 litres of air a day? Neural control in relation to breathing can be categorized into two separate processes. These can be voluntary or involuntary controls of respiration. Breathing occurs rhythmically. This rhythmicity is generated within the respiratory centers of the brainstem. The role of the respiratory center. So I'm just drawing up a rough diagram of the respiratory centers. That way we can use it as a visual tool, which will help us identify and label the different parts. Okay, so the components that you need to be able to identify are the medulla oblongata and also the pons, which are a part of the brainstem. And together, as a whole, they make up the respiratory center. Both the pons and the medulla contain neurons. These neurons are responsible for the transfer of controlling signals that decipher the rate and depth of respiratory movements. Therefore, in the case of involuntary respiration, it is these neurons that are responsible for the movements of the diaphragm and all of the other respiratory muscles. There are three main areas of neurons: pneumotaxic, apnostic, medullary rhythmicity. The pneumotaxic and apnostic areas coordinate transitions between inhalation and exhalation. They work together to balance the process between prolonging inhalation and turning it off before the lungs become too expanded, whereas the medullary area controls the rhythm of the respiration. It is then further split into inspiratory and expiratory areas, which actively involve mainly the contraction of the diaphragm, and particularly in expiration, the internal intercostal and abdominal muscles. Progressing on, voluntary respiration contrasts to what we have previously learned, as it is controlled by the cerebral cortex. In order for respiration to be categorized as voluntary, an influential factor such as emotion or pain must be present. The voluntary pathways that control breathing actually bypass the medulla and send impulses directly to the respiratory motor neurons within the spinal cord. To integrate both neural processes under one title, I thought we could skim over a few of the stimuli that affect breathing. Pain is dependent on type and it can increase or decrease breathing. When blood pressure goes up, rate of breathing goes down and vice versa. Irritation equates to cessation of breathing, usually followed by coughing or sneezing. In summary, we have learnt that respiration can either be voluntary or involuntary, depending on the stimuli given by the individual. You should be able to briefly describe the neuron groups within respiration while illustrating knowledge of the respiratory center. Just remember that these feedback systems of control are always working to maintain homeostatic levels. We will cover regulating respiration next week. Until then,